Good evening, everyone. This is live number 6 for February, so we're almost done. I have one more live next week on Tuesday. I'm super excited because I have Devin Minnis here, and he is an appraiser, and we are going to talk about everything about appraisals this evening. So go ahead and put your questions, your appraisal questions, in the chat. Tell us where you're joining us from. I'm going to let Devin introduce himself while you guys are getting logged in. Devin, tell them who you are.
All right. Well, hello. Thank you so much, Shahida, for having me. I'm so honored to be on your channel and on your live with everyone here tonight. My name is Devin Minnis. I'm actually from Bowie, Maryland. And I went to school. I went to DeMatha Catholic High School. And then I went to Morgan State University. And I was fortunate enough to graduate from Morgan State University with a business degree. Didn't go right into appraisals after that. You know, was kind of figuring out my ground like a lot of college and post-college people are. I am a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. I got to shout that out. They won the step show, so that's why I have to shout that out. They just won the step show. So,
we'll let you have that one.
Yeah. So I got into, I guess I'll get into how I got into appraisals just to start off. I did not know about appraisals, you know, and particularly in Black families and families in general. It's very rare that, you know, the appraisal industry is even talked about. My father told me to get into real estate, but he was referring to a realtor, but I didn't necessarily want to be a realtor. So I found out about appraisals in 2021, I want to say. He who findeth a wife findeth a very, very, very good thing.
Right.
And I was actually in transition. You know, I was actually in transition in my career. So I was doing a job, but I wasn't happy with it. I was just doing it just to, you know, just provide. And my wife was asking me, she was like, well, you know, you're always thinking about, Devin, what type of job will you be good at? What do you know you'll be good at? What can you align your resume to show what you'll be good at? And then she asked me a question, Shahida, which totally changed the game. She said, what do you want from your career? What do you want your career to do for you in your everyday life? And I'm like, wow, it changed the way I thought about what I wanted to do. And it was like, wait a minute, I'm smart. I know I want to, you know what I mean? I know I want to engage with people, but you know, it's like, you know, what do I want for me? So I wanted something that was going to give me flexibility, that I can make very good money with. I have a wife that loves to travel, so I got to be able to get away to a beach. So I need to be able to have a job that I can be remote with. And at the same time, too, I did not want to have a job, Shahida. No shade against anybody who does, but I did not want to have a job that depended upon how well I could develop an Excel spreadsheet and how I could manipulate it and show at quarterly meetings. Like, that's just not me. Right. So, you know, she said, just think about maybe looking into an appraiser's, because she is a mortgage senior loan officer herself, who is the _ mortgage girl boss.
Okay. And we posted his Instagram in the chat, so we'll post hers too. All right. So you got into appraisal. Your wife, like you said, your wife, you know, behind every good man is a good woman for sure. So she got you into appraisals. So tell us how you got into how you started, because the appraisal process, number one, being a Black appraiser, less than 5% of all appraisers are African American or Black. So you know, you're a unicorn. It took us a minute to find you. So you are a unicorn. And we're happy that we did find you. So how did you start the process of becoming an appraiser?
All right. Well, you have to network first and foremost. You have to get out there. You have to expose yourself. You have to talk to your other professionals. The person who actually interrogated me about dating my wife first, that same person who is a real estate investor, Sharif Small, was a very positive mentor brother to us, along with his wife, Alicia. He was getting an appraisal done with my soon-to-be now supervisor, Jack. So Sharif was getting an appraisal done on one of his properties, and Jack was doing it. And he brought it up to Jack. He's like, hey, are you looking for a trainee? Because I have a sister that, you know, that has somebody. And Jack was like, call him up. Because most people, when they start with their appraisal process, they just want to do it part-time. They don't go through the schooling to actually, you know, do the schooling, take the test, pass the test, and then be able to find a supervisor. So they don't have their official trainee registration number. So I had all that taken care of. And Jack was like, get him down here. He was like, hey, he's like, you know where Annapolis is? I said, yep. He's like, I'm having an appraisal on a waterfront property in an hour. If you can be there, great. If not, we'll talk tomorrow. I said, no, I'm going to meet you right then, right now, because I was so excited. And I was very fortunate to be in that, because as you said earlier, less than 5% of us are represented in the entire appraisal industry. And there were certainly some challenges. So that's how I got hooked up into it. And
you do those appraisals in Maryland, Virginia, and DC, or just in Maryland?
DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Okay.
Cover there. We work with commercial properties as well as residential properties. And me being an appraiser apprentice, I work with my supervisor on all the material, and it has been the most amazing time. It has been the most amazing time, and I love it. And I'm so happy, and I'm thankful to be in an industry where I can really start making some change.
Okay. Excellent introduction, Devin. We're going to get right into it. I do have a fun fact, though. I graduated from a high school in Maryland. I could get a full scholarship to Morgan State, and I turned it down to go to Hampton. And Hampton, I was like, I'm going to go to Hampton. I went to Hampton. I only stayed 1 year because those fees were so high. And then I came back to Georgia. So long story, but we could have been at the school at the same time. I'm not as old, young as you.
My mom will love you for that. She's a Hampton.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So our first question for you is, and this for everybody, again, we're talking about appraisal. So definitely put your appraisal question in the comments. Let's see what we have here with us right now. I think Amy Menace, I think you might know her. Hey, Miss Amy, how are you? Tasha says hello. Let's see. Hi, Jasmine. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Desiree says, hand pink waving. Hey, everyone. All righty. And then Chandra says, my aunt was one of, if not the only appraiser in my city. She retired a few years ago, and I don't know of any other since her retirement. She started out as an agent before becoming an appraiser. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. That is
absolutely awesome. That is really awesome.
Good job. First question I want to ask you, Devin, is how are appraisals assigned by lenders? Because a lot of us, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, you may not, hire an appraiser independently. It'll be part of your home purchase. So you're buying a house to make sure that home is worth what the lender is, loaning you the money for. They're going to hire an appraiser to come out to that property and tell them what the property is worth. So how are the appraisals assigned by the lenders?
So there's a couple ways that they're assigned by lenders. Usually there is a thing called an AMC, which is an appraisal management company that stands in sort of like a third party, an unbiased party in between the lending side and the appraiser, to be able to link up, to be able to say, hey, we need the appraisal done for so-and-so townhome in Baltimore, Maryland, on this date. So that will be the go-between to be able to make sure that the process is done in an unbiased and objective way. So AMCs are usually a big option on how they're chosen, and that's usually, and keep in mind these AMCs, they have obviously a conglomerate of appraisers too that they use to be able to go around in a round robin process. Another way that lenders tend to choose an appraiser is that a lending or mortgage company will tend to have their own panel of appraisers. So they'll have a panel of appraisers that have shown competency in their prior reports and turnaround time and standards that meet their clients' needs. And so they will have a panel of these appraisers that will go around, and then they will be able to distribute evenly that process, so that not only the appraisers are being able to get work, and also at the same time too, it's fairness, and it's like a random picking. There isn't like, oh, I want this appraiser because of so and so, I know them or I know them. So that's another way in how lenders choose appraisers, through their own panel. And then you mentioned it a little bit, Shahida, when you first started talking about how there is your direct solicitation. And that happens with me. If anyone has any questions, they usually could just hit my Instagram, and then I'm able to forward them on through the company that I'm with, and we are able to then get the appraisal process going.
Okay, great. All right, so one of the things that people may not be aware of is, when appraisals get started, right?
Okay.
And a lot of my first-time home buyers are like surprised by this, is that the appraiser is going to ask, for a copy of the contract. They're going to ask for a copy of the contract. So you made an offer. They know what you've offered for this property. And what's been agreed to, I guess, you see you're not going blind, I guess. You're going to see that contract prior to the appraisal with the amount that you're trying to pay. And I guess what I've heard from other appraisers, so say you see the contract is for $250, you come in saying, okay, this, they're saying they're going to pay $250. You represent the bank and you're trying to say, hey, is this property really worth $250? And you're going from there instead of going, let me just go see what this property is worth. All right. Why do appraisers want or need to see a copy of the contract first?
Well, appraisers need to be able to see the contract first because it helps us be able to have a better informed scope of work. And what I mean by that, being an appraiser, it's very important. That's the first thing we kind of think about whenever we get a job, is scope of work. And what scope of work, to define if someone can't put that together, is more so the problem identification. So what is the actual property that's being asked? Is it a townhome? Is it a condo? Is it an exterior appraisal? Is it just a final appraisal? Is it just another word for exterior? Drive-by appraisals, which aren't as common as they used to be back in the day. But so that's our scope of work is so very important for us to be able to have that access. Also, too, it's important for us to be able to have the contract because the contract has so much important data that gives a tangible data to us that shows what the market is willing to pay for the property. So we need that data to be able to help better prepare us for when we come out to the property. So I hope that answers your question a little bit more.
Yes, that does help answer the question. Again, those of you that are just joining us, we have about 100 people on the live right now. Make sure you're hitting the like button, the subscribe button. If you're new here, these are special Black History Lives.
Yeah.
Today we're talking all about appraisals. We're going to talk about appraisal bias. We're going to talk about everything and try to answer as many of your questions as possible. So definitely put your questions in the chat. Rita says, go Morgan State. Morgan State, hey. And then Nisi says, how do I find an appraiser if I want to find my own? So we know how to contact Devin, and Ms. Amonra is going to put his Instagram in the chat again, but what's your Instagram again? At
_husband appraiser. Again,
okay, and we'll post it one more time so you'll see it. But how could we know how to find you in general? How can somebody find an appraiser?
They can contact the Appraisal Institute. The Appraisal Institute, which is based out of Chicago, is the headquarters for all things appraisals. So they will be able to have a directory for you to be able to find an appraiser, and according to their certification and in your state. Because obviously, what's the point if you're in the state of Maryland, getting an appraiser that's based out in, Los Angeles, California, so they will be able to find it there. You can also contact your local state appraisal board, and every state has them because there's houses in every single state. So
the local appraiser board or the Appraisal Institute.
The Appraisal Institute is always going to be your best bet for all things appraisals. And then they could be able to get take it from there. But if you want to get more specific, you can look up a specific chapter of of the state for your appraisals.
Okay. Is there like a National Association of Black Appraisers or some kind of organization where if they wanted to find a Black appraiser, they could find one?
You know what? There may be. I'm never going to answer a question that I don't know the full answer to. There might be one. I'm not a part of it, but I will be. After this.
I'm going to say that I did those Google searches prior to thinking about this, and I couldn't find one that was very active, but I'm sure there is one. And I think I did find something, but they didn't have like a member list where you could go to see the member list. But I did find some, but I thought there wasn't a member list attached to it. But hey, if you're on this live right now and you know what it is or how we find one, definitely post it. If you watch this on the replay, definitely post it under here. We'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. So sometimes, especially on the listing side, we may disagree with the appraisal, or on the refinance side, we may disagree with the appraisal, and we may try to challenge it. How likely is it for an appraiser to change their appraisal based on an agent or maybe the homeowner disputing that appraisal?
You mean to tell me that there's actually a dispute with the value of the home?
Yes, there might be. Yes, Devin, because my house is worth $1 million, and you told me it was worth $800,000. So we need to have I'm gonna dispute what you said, because I've lived in this house and it's worth more than that. We're not even talking about bias right now. We're just talking about, I just don't think you appraised my house correcely. You didn't see my gold tile floors. You missed that. Okay, so what if I have a dispute with the appraisal? How likely are you to change your appraisal?
Well, okay, so,
and not you specifically, or any appraisers.
Okay, I think I see you. I think I'm tracking you. Data. So what I'm trying to say is that appraisers are supposed to do their job database, which is supposed to remove certain things like bias, which we won't go into until later. But if you have data that is supportive of why you feel your home should be considered in this value, as opposed to what the appraiser put as the value, if you have data supporting that and it aligns correctly, then why shouldn't the appraiser, consider changing that? Now, I think where the issue comes into play is people feel that their data is better than the data that the appraiser finds. And so what I will say is that the appraiser more than likely will not change something based off of your belief on what a neighbor may have told you or what you knew happened a year ago or 2 years ago. But if you have tangible data, particularly the closer to the actual effective date of the appraisal, which you'll hear me say a couple times here, effective date is the date of the actual appraisal being done, as in Devin comes out to your house on Tuesday. So if you can get good data and provide it to the appraiser, appraisers should be welcoming to good information, because we want to get it right.
Okay, that they may have overlooked or maybe didn't include. Let's talk to people who have never seen an appraisal before.
Absolutely.
When you do an appraisal, they're going to have the comps that they use, like the other homes that they use to arrive at your value. They will show you every house that they use. So if they use those houses, they didn't use maybe other houses. They may have had a reason why they didn't use those. But they will have the houses that they use to determine your value. It's very detailed. I'm going to plug my first time homebuyer guide. If you want to see an appraisal, I have a copy of an appraisal so you can see what one looks like. But they're going to include all of that information. Also, the appraiser's name is on there, who appraised their house, their license number, all of that stuff is there. That's going to lead me to that next question. Can an agent, so say you did the appraisal, can they try to call you about the appraisal, or do they just need to call their lender? Can a buyer or a seller contact you directly?
They can.
Not for private appraisals, but like the lender-based appraisals.
The lender-based appraisals. I've had people contact me, if that answers your question. I've had agents contact me, but primarily, so here's what I will say is that the appraiser, like I said, any information, whether if it's from the buying or listing side, that can be objective and can help be able to get to the proper value for a property, is welcomed by any party. What I will say is the contact, when an agent, the best time to contact an appraiser is primarily before the effective date, before we get out there to do the actual analysis. So, and you can call to be able to ask questions. Sometimes Shahida, I've had to call on a homeowner myself because I couldn't get into contact with the listing agent. Is because I had to tell the homeowner, hey, my last appointment ran 30 minutes too late. I'm gonna be there a little bit later than the window you expected. So sometimes we have to coordinate with multiple parties just to be able to get not only access to the property, or maybe you need that type of information. So yes, you guys certainly can contact us, but preferably if you have to contact the appraiser, if it's a lending side, try to go through your lender, but if not, make sure it's before the effective date. so that we can be able to do what we need to do.
You want to make sure you're not being biased on that side where it's like, well, I need to appraise for 5,000 more. I need to appraise for 10,000 more. And, that it's kind of, ethically wise or ethics wise.
Absolutely.
I guess, what am I trying to say? Ethically, you don't want to have those conversations with a buyer or a seller.
And I don't want to be, a homeowner should not want me as an appraiser to be influenced in any type of way. Gotcha. And that's a way that it can happen. The way, if it's brought up, let's say if it's brought up, like you said, after the value's been determined, then that's
there's a proper way to do it through the
then there's a way to go through that. But if prior to me getting out there, if you're like, hey, if you're an agent, you're like, hey, I have some comps that I just want to send you, absolutely send them over to me, and I'll take a look at them with my analysis.
And that's what I do for listing appraisals specifically. So if I have a listing and I arrived at a price, I'm meeting the appraiser. That this is a little hack that agents do. We're taking the lockbox off. You're not getting in the house without me being there.
Oh, okay. You're one of those.
I'm one of those. So I'm taking the lockbox off. And then I'm going to make you call me, and I'm going to meet you out there, and I'm going to have a folder saying, hey, these are the comps that I use to arrive at this value. And, and I'm going to have that, some agents putting cookies out there and snacks. I don't do all of that, but I'm going to meet you on the listing side with, the comps that I use to arrive at the listing price at the minimum, and some other things like, how many offers we got and all of that kind of stuff. Because that, like you said, is helpful beforehand. It is very difficult to even talk to an appraiser after the fact, unless you're doing like the dispute process.
Absolutely.
So that's a good point to note. I think we had a question I'm going to take. Let me see what I saw. Hey, Devin, what are the largest? Hey, Michelle, thank you for the question. Hi, Devin. What are the largest factors taken into consideration during an appraisal? Like, what is let's go top 3. What are the top 3 things that are going to have the most impact on value?
Well, I can't say that the top 3 things are going to be the same in every market, because every market is different. That is so important that I say as an appraiser, every single market is different. And when I mean market, sometimes your market can be the city that you live in is its own market. Because let's say in terms of urban cities like DC, you can be 30 seconds away from one address and it be a whole different aspect. A whole different ball game. So appraiser has to be competent in terms of the market. So to say that the top 3 are always going to be the same every single market is not the case. But in general, what we look for in terms that gives the most value, square footage, and not just square footage, above grade square footage. And here's what I mean by that. Above grade square footage, meaning above grade, above level, meaning if it's in the basement, that is not the square footage that can increase the value of your home. When I'm trying to decide comparable properties to be able to compare to the subject property that I'm doing on a particular day, square footage is going to be a very, very big factor. So if you can add square footage to your home, that puts you in a different category. That's going to be your biggest thing. Then if we're going to talk about on the outside of the home, then we're talking about big main selling areas. This is where it gets fun for a lot of people, because when you're talking about your kitchens, and then when you're talking about your bathrooms, areas where the majority of time is spent in the home, where wear and tear is done in the home, and when that can be strengthened and updated, that will help your condition ratings. So Michelle, that's what I wanted to kind of, if I could give you those 3, adding above grade square footage is very key. Your work to your kitchen and your bathrooms in terms that will help increase the conditions. Now I have to say this.
Okay.
If I come into your house and you tell me that you have brand new fixtures and knobs that you put in over the entire kitchen, I cannot include that in upgrading your value in your appraisal.
You don't care about my Home Depot knobs? I paid $3.99.
Let me tell you something. I bought
25 of them, and they're brass. Okay.
I'm trying to tell you, Shahida, I have been told. Now, was given by my grandmother from World War II. And I'm trying to, do you have any members, young man, in your family that served the forces? And it's like, man, that isn't going to increase the value and everything of the property. But yes, so those three things, Michelle, just to get to you, I will say that. If I can, Michelle, can I give her a little other tidbit of information?
Yes, sure.
Solar panels, which is something that's actually been talked about a lot more, particularly in the past several years, particularly with appraisals. I just want to kind of dispel a belief. Solar panels are great. You know, they're great. One misconception that some people have is how much will a solar panel add to the value of my home? Solar panels don't add value to your home unless they are fully bought outright. And a lot of times when people are getting solar panels on their home, they may be already they're being financed. So if they're not already fully bought outright, you can't consider that being a part to be able to add value to your appraisal. Now, what I will say is that the cost that you put in to put those solar panels in, it probably is not going to be the type of value that's going to add to your bottom line value of your home. But adding things such as solar panels, that is something that is an added feature that needs to be focused on an appraisal report. If you have like I said, that added square footage is really where you want to stay and to be for sure with that answer. I don't want to get too far in the weeds.
Okay. But you're basically saying, like, when those solar panel salespeople come to you and say, hey, you're gonna bring so much value to your home and make it worth so much more, it's really not. Especially
really not. And pools, Lord, pools.
Talk about pools.
Say this because my wife wants a pool too. And
you're like, the pool's not worth it.
Shahida, I had to put on my appraiser hat. I was like, hey, babe, I'm not talking to you as my husband. I'm talking to you as an appraiser. Look, it's not what you think. And above grade, and particularly pools that are constructed on top of the ground, not going to add any value. In-ground pools are not going to add the value that you think they're going to add. It is more cost than adding value. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, so good point to make, because a lot of those things are pretty expensive, especially in-ground pools, and you're thinking, okay, I'm spending $40,000, $50,000 for this pool, and it's not going to bring, added $50,000 to your home. Because a lot of people on the sales side, when you're looking at pools, a lot of people see pools as more work for them to do. Some people see it as a safety hazard. There's a lot of maintenance regarding those. So it's not automatic for everyone. A pool is not, value added. It might just look at, okay, I have less backyard space. I have more to take care of, all that kind of stuff. So just be mindful. If you want a pool, want it for yourself. Don't just want a pool to add value to your house. You really want
and the last thing I will add to Michelle's question, also a bigger lot that helps. If you have more land, that's going to increase the value of your home. Okay. So,
very good points. Yeah. Very good points. All right. We have a super chat. Let's see what this question is. All right. Michelle just says thank you. Okay. So we don't have a super chat. Michelle really liked that answer. So let's see. Thank you. I think it's the same, Michelle. Yes. Thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. All right. So I'm going back up while I'm looking for the next question. I want to ask you, we already talked about this. What renovations add the most value? Same thing. We're talking about bathroom renovations, kitchen renovations, and adding, an addition to your house would add the most value.
Above grade square footage. That's where you
keep on saying that too. Let me focus on that.
Focus on above grade
my basement would be less than if I added like a fourth bedroom to the house.
Yeah, like if you have more bedrooms, then those are things on the appraisal report where adjustments have to be taken into consideration. So bedrooms, bathrooms, like you said, that above grade square footage. That's literally what makes you have more of a home. Things that you buy from Walmart or Amazon to put inside your home, I can't,
Keep playing us now. Walmart, Amazon, what about Wayfair?
Oh, look, now hold on. I can't talk. Now, hold on. So I'll talk to you about Wayfair off screen. I don't know if that's a sponsor. I don't know if that's a sponsor.
I need sponsors for this. We're going to talk. Walmart might sponsor us one day. We're going to talk. We love Walmart and Target and Walmart, everything.
Amen.
Amen. Let's see. Okay, hold on. We may be going. Okay. Juicy Fruit says, thank you, Father. I made this live. Thank you so much.
Amen.
Kat says, I don't have Instagram or any other social media. I told you got to have some for these older folks, Devin. Come on now. We're going to think about how you can contact Devin outside of Instagram.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. I won't put you on the spot right now, but we'll have a contact in the description after this video of how you can contact him, maybe on YouTube, right? We're going to have a contact for Devin there. Thank you so much. We have a link to my first time home buyer guide. I appreciate that. I also have an appraisal video that I did, Devin. It's about what happens if my home doesn't appraise for the purchase price. If you're wondering what happens, you watch that. All right. Our question to Nisha: what if you're the first to purchase in a new development, I guess new construction? What comps are used then? Like, what do you go by if you're the first house? That's a good question, Tanisha.
It's a very great question. Love that question. So if there aren't any comps, if you're the first to purchase that new home in that new development, then what the appraiser will do, they will extend their parameter of their search out to the point where they can find something that is actually comparable. So probably another new development area. So if it's a new development townhome area, you know, we'll have to, and you're the first one there, they'll find another development as close as possible to your address. Because remember, the comparables have to be comparable. It's really hard to say that it's going to be a comparable if the house is in a whole nother state than the other house that's being appraised. So very good question. Very good question. And that does happen, Tanisha. That actually happened several weeks ago. You know, there was a new development, and I didn't have that. There weren't comps available in that specific area, so I actually had to drive out a little bit further to be able to find those similar properties.
All right, thank you so much, Tanisha. We appreciate it. We got another super chat from Cameron, and he doesn't have a question, but he says, "Love your channel, aspiring appraiser here." So I'm happy to make you have this all like a whole website and everything for all these appraisers. So what if Cameron wants to get started? What would be his first step? Because I know you had kind of a connection, you were networking. What would be his first step in his area? What would you suggest for him to do?
I would certainly look up the Appraisal Institute. The second, I'm actually going to give a shout out to the school that brought me through. McKissick School of Learning is a very, very established and certified provider of appraiser education. So when I was applying for appraiser school, not applying for appraiser school, when I purchased my admittance into appraisal.
McKinsey, we're gonna need an affiliate link. Affiliate links where he purchased his program.
When I purchased,
right.
When I purchased it, they took me through the school program. And the cool thing about McKissick, Cameron, is the fact that they had all different types of learning formats. And being a son of a former educator, I know Shahida is a former educator herself. Having the type of learning format that can assimilate easiest to your mind is the best. So the cool thing about McKissick's, they had their online program, but you did it your own pace, right? Some people love that. Not so much for me. My wife, probably. Not so much for me. Then they also had your live stream courses. This is what I really love, because this was when you got to be digital with a live professor and with your other classmates. And you meet on a weekly basis and you learn your course material, and you also have to take your test. So I would start off with that McKissick school. That's where I would start with being an appraiser. Also, too, find other appraisers that are in the area and talk to them, ask them questions. If you feel more comfortable finding an appraiser that may be of a minority, you know, if you are an aspiring minority wanting to be an appraiser, you know, find us unicorns out there, as Shahida said earlier. We are out there.
With Devin, but
you know, and Cameron, hit me up. You know, if you have a question, and here's the thing, I want to say this too. If there's any questions that in the super chat that I don't know, I'm going to find the answer, and I have the resources to be able to find that answer. So just hit me up, Cameron, and I hope that gives you a good starting point. McKissick School, look it up, give me a call. I'll even give you the name of the lady who signed me up herself.
Okay, yeah, and Devin, you're gonna need an affiliate link. They're gonna give you one. I'm sure they have one. All right, Chef Brooklyn says, "Thank you for doing this show. Thank you, everyone." Let's see. We'll call it Britt. Britt says, "Does above grade also include finished basements?"
So Brittany, I'm gonna say Britt because I don't know if your name is Brittany.
Okay.
Britt, you actually answered the question in the answer. Remember, if it's above grade, it has to be above the ground. So the basement is below the ground. So above grade does not include finished basements.
Okay, so we're talking about value. A finished basement will be worth more than an unfinished basement.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying.
But it'll still be worth less than if it was above ground, right?
Yes. Okay.
So there is value in finishing your basement, but it's still not going to be as much value as if it was above ground.
Yeah.
So if he's putting a dollar amount per square footage, you're getting a higher dollar amount above ground and a lower dollar amount below ground, even if it's finished. Correct?
Because people live above ground.
People live above ground. Yeah. But you know, New York, other places, people.
Well, that's true. That's true. Now, and look, I grew up a Ninja Turtle fan, so I am not against anybody moving into the sewers, getting some IKEA furniture, doing what they got to do.
Why they gotta have IKEA furniture?
Because you know you can only fit
IKEA basement.
Okay, they live in nice IKEA furniture down the sewer. You can't.
Okay. But below, just in general, you guys, he's trying to make the point of anything below level, below grade is going to be worth less than above grade.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So Gina asked, what if the appraisal comes in low? And I think we posted that, that video that I did, but just in general, from my side, if I'm representing you as a buyer and we're under contract, say for $300,000, and then the appraiser comes and they say, hey, this property is only worth $280,000, right? Then I need to go back to the listing agent and say, hey, I'm doing an amendment to say, let's put this contract at $280,000. That's what I'm going to first. And I'm going to say something like, my buyers, they're already paying the closing costs. They already have the down payment. They can't pay the difference. Now in the seller's market, people were paying that difference. They were saying, hey, it came in at 280. The seller was saying, well, give me the other 220,000 out of your own pocket. That's what was happening during that seller's market. Now, in most markets, it's not that hot. So you should be negotiating back to that appraised value so you're not paying that much. Before, like COVID, everything got so crazy. That was a standard, at least in Atlanta, that was pretty much the standard that we're going back to that appraised value. We're going to negotiate this contract back to 280. I'm not paying above appraised value. But when when people were getting, 10 offers, 20 offers, then people were paying that, above appraised value. But all the lender, and I'll let you add on to this, Devin, but all the lender is going to lend you is $280,000. Okay.
Yes.
They're not going to lend you that $300,000 because Devin, the appraiser, said it's only worth $280,000. So that's why the appraiser is important to the lender. Remember, even though you pay for the appraisal, the appraiser works for the lender. They don't work for you. They're trying to figure out, unless you hire them independently. They're trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out, is this house worth what I'm lending, right, this person for? Am I lending them too much money for this house? Because if they ever have to foreclose on you, if they have to foreclose, they want to make sure that asset is worth, enough for them to get their money back or most of their money back. What do you want to add to that, Devin?
You really did touch on it all. In fact, you said exactly the tagline I was going to say is that the appraiser, the lender cannot give you more money than what the appraisal comes in for. They're not going to lend you, $300,000, and it comes in as 280. And Gina, I think what we were alluding to a little bit earlier is that's why it's important, particularly before that appraisal date, if there's any research or any data that you can help provide to be able to help the appraiser to be able to come at the proper value and what it is, because that's what everyone wants. Everyone wants I want the proper value. I want what it's worth and what it should go for. Well, if you have data that supports that, provide that to the appraiser, preferably before the effective date, which is the actual date of the appraisal appointment. So,
okay. And that's why I say I change up. On the listing side, I'm meeting the appraiser at the door because I'm trying to make sure my client gets that value, right? But on the buyer side, I don't care. I'm not meeting that appraiser. If we're the only person, I want my client to be paying that $280,000. I don't want them to pay the $300,000. So when you have an agent, depending on who's representing you, if you're the buyer's agent, they're representing your best interest, and the listing agent, they're representing the best interest. So usually, if appraisal comes in low on the listing side, right, they're going to be talking to that appraiser, the lender, they're showing comps. And what he's saying is they should have showed the comps at the very beginning, or they should have, shown some data at the very beginning. Don't wait until, you already have your appraisal that came out and then try to dispute it. So just be mindful of that, whether you're on the selling side or whether you're on the buying side, right? You want to make sure, you know where you fall on either side.
Yeah.
Now, so good question, Gina. There's another question. How about adding new HVAC, a new roof, and new water heaters? So say, how much does that factor into the value?
So particularly with the roof, that's going to certainly assist in your condition rating. And in your appraisal report, along with the bottom line value given, which is what everyone usually goes to first, there's also condition ratings and quality ratings in the home. And adding a new HVAC, roof, and water heater, those are things that can certainly support a very good, well-conditioned home. And a condition rating, a good condition rating on your appraisal report is important. What if, because there may be, let's say there may be comps, maybe there's only a certain number of comps for this specific property, and maybe one of the properties, maybe the comps had to have a different condition rating. Well, if your condition rating, is higher than the one that appraiser may have had to use, that's lower, then that adjustment then is going to be made. So HVAC, a new HVAC, roof, and water heater are certainly pros to that. As in terms of the exact dollar amount, I do not have that exact dollar amount, because I have to be able to be doing a full scope of work on the appraisal to be able to get all that information. I will say this though, water heaters, tankless water heaters are very, very awesome. And I did a post on that, which got a lot of good track from it, because I think sometimes people want to know what appraisers think about appliances, not so much just like realtors or other buyers,
right?
So yes, a tankless water heater is one of the new age ways of being able to have the most efficient way of your water being used. And I don't have one, but supposedly your water never gets cold, and that's all.
I don't have one either, but basically you don't have to wait for the water to get hot. It's all instant, right? You don't have to run for a little while.
It's efficient. Now they cost, but if you can afford to do that, the functionality and the operation of your home is going to affect everything else that everyone sees in the home. Your HVAC and your roof, and that water heater. Because think about it. If the roof isn't done well, things are going to come in through the roof, and we're going to see it in the ceilings, and that's going to be causes for potential hazard that the appraiser is going to notice. If you have a water heater and your water is not, and you don't have utilities on and stuff, and it's not working properly, then that is something that has to be noted.
Okay, good to know. Okay, we have 155 people on the live stream right now. If you're watching the replay, make sure you like and subscribe, because we want Devin to come back, right? So
yes, I would love to come back.
And make sure his link for his Instagram is in the chat. So make sure you're following him on Instagram. All right, so we're going to take the rest of your questions, so keep on putting them in the chat. I wanted to talk about the racial bias. This is our Black History special. And we've all seen in the news and in the description of this video, if you haven't, there have been a lot of people that they call whitewashing their homes, where they had to take down the pictures. They had to take down their family photos, maybe any if they've traveled to different places, they've had to take down those kind of things. Basically not showing any evidence that Black people live here, because they had an appraisal done one time and they left everything up. And then, they thought their home was undervalued. So then they whitewash it to make sure, you don't know who lives there. Or they put actually even white families in the pictures and that sort of thing. And then another appraiser comes in and the value changes dramatically. So this is happening. I have 4 stories in the description of this video if you want to look more of how this happened to people specifically. But this is happening because, like you said, only less than 5% of appraisers are Black or African American. So most of the people that appraise your properties, a lot of times they're maybe not even familiar with your area. They may be coming, when we talk to Devin about how they're assigned appraisals, it's kind of a round robin. So you may have somebody that's not very familiar with your area, and then they're coming out and they're appraising it. And depending on what that bias is, they may undervalue value just because, just of your race. And we know that that's a problem. So I want to talk to Devin and say, what do you suggest for homeowners who feel like they are, because our number one asset for most people is their home. And so when you're doing a home refinance, or you're selling your home and you're trying to get the biggest value for that, so that appraiser, is a big part of making sure you get the highest value for your home. So what do you suggest for people that feel like either beforehand or after they should be doing to protect themselves from any kind of bias in appraisals?
So if anything, if you feel that, that there is that your home has been biased against or discriminated against in the appraisal process, number one, that's what's going to be very important is your data that you have. And let me first, by answering this question, because I can't answer this question about appraiser bias without letting people know what an actual appraiser, the definition of an appraiser actually is. I'm going to read it actually from my USPAT book, which is our code of ethics, Uniform Standard for Professional Appraisal Practices. It reads in quote, because it can be a little wordy, so that's what I'm going to say. An appraiser is defined as one who is expected to perform valuation services competently and in a manner that is independent, impartial, and objective. So an appraiser is one who is expected to perform the valuation service in a manner that is independent, impartial, and objective. One of the reasons why lenders choose appraisers in the way that they do is that's one of the ways to prevent that bias. So it is a round robin. So sometimes you may get someone that may not be from that specific city, but the point is this: if you feel if that has been the case, it is important to be able to get your data together so that you can be able to have data proof to show, hey, my house should not be worth this, what the appraiser said that it was worth for, because of this supporting argument. If you can provide evidence that the appraiser tangibly did not do what they were supposed to do, have that data available so that you can be able to support that argument. Also, too, you can also turn that appraiser and that report in to your appraisal standard board. So you can be able to go to the appraisal institute if need be, or your local state appraisal board, and to be able to report that dispute with them. A lot of people don't realize that they can do that, and you should do it right. You should do it sooner than later. But you see, this is why having more talks like this, Shahida, which I'm so glad with your reach that you're doing, is because what did we talk about beforehand? We've been talking about ways that can eliminate this bias in ways. So if before the actual date of the inspection, since we have seen claims of people feeling the need to be able to do these things, such as whitewashing their homes, which is completely unacceptable in any case, do research beforehand. Make sure that and if you're working with a realtor, do research beforehand to make sure that you guys can get the proper data available so that you can be able to help the appraiser do their job effectively, impartially, and without bias. So doing your work beforehand, getting that data. Also, too, if you feel afterwards that you report it right away, contact your local state appraisal board or contact the Appraisal Institute or both of them together, and to be able to do that. Because if there are appraisers that are doing this, that goes against the actual definition of what an appraiser actually is. Now, if I may give a little context, because context is important in everything.
Please do.
I am a son of the first civil rights Black lawyer in Pinellas County, Florida. My grandfather, Frederick G. Menace Sr. My sister-in-law is the census voter director of the Advancement of Asian American Justice Center in downtown DC. Civil rights is in my family. Has there been bias in the industry? Yes, there has been a bias in the industry. All appraisers bias? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But to say that there isn't bias is to say that people don't have favorite colors. There's bias, and people don't realize just in everyday life how biased we truly are. So to think that they're a natural human element and that there isn't some few bad appraisers that aren't that are devaluing property or not giving the property the type, just the proper value that it deserves, those appraisers shouldn't be in the industry. So yes, there has been a bias. There are some bad appraisers, but most appraisers and appraisers that I've run into, black and white, they have been focused on being impartial, and they focused on doing their jobs so that they don't have to do that. There's also parts on the appraisal report that the appraiser has to check that says, I do not have any vested interest in, any personal interest in this property, or have any type of prejudice, determined prejudices against the people, that the owners of the property. Those aspects are covered in your appraisal reports, and appraisers are supposed to go through each single aspect of that report and to read it and check it so that it prevents those ways of bias. But again, to summarize, make sure you have your data ahead of time so that you can provide the appraiser with the proper information. If you feel afterwards that you have still been discriminated against, or you've been a victim of appraiser bias, report it directly to your local state appraisal board, as well as the Appraiser Institute, and there will be a swift investigation that happens. And I can tell you personally that one of the appraisers that I actually initially contacted for mentoring couldn't do it at first because the appraisal board had a mark on their report for something. It wasn't appraiser bias, but they keep a tally on when there's errors done in the report. So you can provide that type of information, but you have to say something, and you have to say something right away. Don't wait several years till the market changes and everything. Report it right away.
Okay, very good. Very, very good. So make sure you have your data. Work with your realtor, especially if you're getting like an appraisal for like a refinance, or you're, a lot of this stuff is happening around refinances. So you're trying to either pull cash out of your home, you're trying to take a home equity loan, you're trying to do something, or you're about to list your house, you're doing a appraisal. Whatever you're doing, don't do it at the last minute, where you're like, okay, if I got to dispute this and dispute that, I need my money now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You want to do it where it gives you enough time to make sure that that value is right. Because there are a lot of people, you go out and do the home equity loan, you pay for the appraisal, and you're like, oh, I thought my house was worth more, but it's after the fact, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'll just take the money. I need the money to do this, this, and this. And you're taking that lower value, and you don't have time for that dispute. So you want to make sure that you are, like you said, ahead of time. You contact your former realtor, whoever sold you the house. They can help you pull some of the data he's talking about, help you pull those things together and kind of come up with a value of what, they think your house is worth. And the appraisal should be in that same range. If it's drastically different, then you could actually cancel that, right? Or you could dispute it, cancel it. You could report it. Or you can go ahead and, use another company and see what they come out with. But just make sure you're not up against like a time crunch where you have to take that lower amount, because some of these appraisals are coming at hundreds of thousands of dollars less with their work. So you don't want to lose or leave that money on the table just going by that one appraisal. So thank you so much for that answer, Devin. Did you want to add anything else?
Can I just bring for the follow-up for people? Because I want people to feel that they have resources that, if you do. And once you do that, oh my gosh, it left my head real quick. You were talking, it was right there. Oh, gotcha. Review appraisers. There's such a thing as review appraisers. Oh. So there are appraisers that are hired to specifically review past appraisals that are done. Okay. So that may be another option that you want to do. Get a appraiser to actually review that actual appraisers. And from what I have seen, those appraisers are actually the ones that have been in the field super long. Okay. Like I'm talking 15 years in, these are the people that are reviewing files because they've seen the whole gambit. So another fresh set.
Very, very good point. All right, so let's get through as many questions as possible. We're hitting up at 7:00. Okay. My neighbor's house next to mine sold for $575,000. I have a similar house, larger in size, more bedrooms. updated, extended patio, beautiful landscape, yet my appraisal is $100,000 less. I'm going to take it from the realtor side. Now, when you say your neighbor's house sold, was it at the height of like, the seller's market?
You were right in my head.
Because that could be a major difference. Homes that sold like in 2021 may not get what you're getting in 2023.
Absolutely.
Regardless, like the market has changed dramatically. So I would say that for one, just be mindful. It could be the market, right?
Yeah.
But what do you say on the appraisal side when something comes in that much less?
So when you're getting above that 500,000 range, then numbers don't have as much of an impact technically, if that makes sense. So here's what I'm trying to say. When you're thinking about $500,000, $20 isn't as much. But when you're talking about $1,000, $20 is a lot to that $1,000 away. So what I'm trying to say is that I would have to know the exact market. I'd have to do research. And that's why you can't really just say it's exactly that, because there's an entire analysis that has to happen to be able to see. Shahida, you brought up the number one point, which sometimes, I'm not saying it's this in Aqua's experience, but a lot of times it's exactly what you said, is the time range too. If you're trying to compare a home that sold on the block 2 years ago when the market was really high and it was a buyer's market, and then now you're trying to, or it was a seller's market, seller's market, and then now you're trying to do it 2 years later. Well, that's a whole different aspect. So you want to make sure that everything is as closely related as possible. But if all of that is the same, then Aqua, you may want to consider getting your appraisal reviewed.
Okay, good question. Tavares, we like a home. We think it's overvalued for the area. If we made an offer at sales price and the home appraised $30,000 less than list price, will the seller drop the price under contract if they want to sell you the house? That's my answer. Watch that video about if you're the only offer and they want to sell the house, more than likely they will. If they had multiple offers, maybe they won't. But watch the video that I have about the appraisal from the buyer's perspective. But typically, if you're like their only offer, they don't have anybody else, they're probably going to reduce that price to the appraised value.
Good question,
and then on your end, you have to say, do I want to buy a house that is not worth, right? Do I want to buy a house that, I have to make up that $30,000? So more than likely, depending on your market, they'll probably go down in that value. And you have to say, are you going to walk away, right? Can you walk away? Or do you want to pay $30,000 more than what it's worth? So be mindful about that. All right, so I'm going to try to get through some of the questions here. Question from Jennifer. A house has visible water damage under sink from disposal leak and wet peeling laminate around toilet. How much will this affect appraisal? I'm ignoring it all together. On the other side, I'm ignoring it all together.
But in the fourth corner of the house and everything. Yeah. I got a purple crayon. That's
this is not a big deal on my end as a realtor. I'm gonna tell you to overlook that, especially if it's an old leak. An inspector will say if it's an active leak or an old leak. I had a roof leak on my roof, not a leak. I had a wet stain. The leak had been repaired, but I didn't repaint the ceiling yet. And I had it for like 2 years. Like we just repainted it last year. So just because you see a wet mark doesn't mean that there's an active leak. So to me, some people just,
that's very
upkeep, right? Doesn't mean that they're doing anything. So in a realtor's perspective, I'm like, that's not a big deal. But on appraisers, do y'all make that a big deal?
How I was taught by my appraiser, Jack Sunso, Jack is not looking to come in your house and try to nitpick, like, oh, they didn't mark up that dust right there. That's a mark on their condition rating. Things happen in a house, okay? Whether if it's beautiful or not beautiful, there's going to be natural wear and tear. But I will say this to Jennifer's point. There was a time in Baltimore, and I was actually doing an appraisal in the inner city Baltimore, and a lot of times those basements are unfinished. That's not uncommon for the market. But underneath the HVAC, there was a large puddle area, and I had to get closer to kind of see if it was an active live puddle. And there, you could tell there was perspiration. Jennifer, that does affect the appraisal, and I have to mark that on the report that there is noticeable leakage in this, around this home appliance, and that needs to be attended to. If there is, I'm peeling and laminate around the toilet. If there is, you know, like I said, it's wear and tear on a house. Like, you know, sometimes there's going to be a piece of the wallpaper that may be a little scratched and stuff like that. I mean, that happens. That doesn't mean the house is falling down, or that doesn't mean the toilet isn't attached properly if there's a little bit of, you know, of flooring that tends to be worn. Appraisers should not be looking to come in to try to figure out how to do value. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think we're back.
I think we
all right.
We skipped
Thank you.
out.
I think we went out for a second, but I think we're about.
Yeah.
No, I think it could have been on my end. All right. How many miles? I verified the game. How many miles out can an appraiser go to find comparables?
As many miles as is needed to be able to get those comparables.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you this: how many comparables is enough typically?
I have seen an average from 3 to. I have seen at least 3 comparables. Is usually at least 3, all the way up to 9 to 10 comparables for a property, depending on what it is. But let's just say in a general basis, and because remember, verify the game. Every market is different. So an urban market will be different in DC as opposed it is into, you know, Kentucky. So let's say for your urban markets, you should have to go out. You shouldn't have to go as far, because it should be a more highly condensed area. For your suburb markets, that's when, you know, you may have to do a little bit more play. In your rural areas, I'm in Baltimore County, so a lot of times I have to go in rural areas. Sometimes I have to drive anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes to get a comp. So hopefully that.
Good answer. Good question. All right. Hi, Devin. Is the appraised value added or subtracted for homes with nicer landscapes versus homes where it was obviously not maintained? He's trying to come for me and my grass and my weeds. Okay, so all right, looking at the nice landscape, nice flowers, how much you adding to that?
Shahida Judy is pissed at her neighbor Gerald.
Right,
that's really what it is.
Right. My house will be worth more. I have better grass. They have weeds. How much?
So Judy, I'm sorry. Just because you have nicer grass, that's not a part of the home. So, you know, so I can't give you more of a value because your poinsettias are on point. You know, I can't do that. You know, so no, not really. If the ground is to a point where it's unsafe and someone could get hurt walking onto the property, then yes, that's something that I need to notate. So.
Okay. But if they have like a larger yard, then yes, it is worth more.
Yeah, if Judy's grass is cut and the other grass isn't cut and it's the same house, same value. All right, here's a question. Do you care if they have an HOA versus not HOA? So that's a very good question, J. Troy. The HOA actually is needed on the report. There is a section that is required of that. So that needs to be a question that the appraiser should be asking when. So I'll give you little tidbits as homeowners. Like if you're getting an appraisal done, probably one of the first questions that the appraiser probably should ask you, that he or she should ask you, should be, is there any updates in the home in the past 5 to 10 years that I don't know about already that you can provide me with? So, and then another one should be, is there an HOA? What are the fees? So that's a very, very good question, Jay Troy.
Okay, very, very good. I'm trying to get through a few more. How does one make sense of homes being overpriced within the last 2 years and now prices are declining? It seems as though the appraisals are whatever the market says the home is worth. And that's typical. Okay, let me say this. The market is a big factor in what a home is worth, right? If there's more demand for a house, if there's less supply and more demand, that house is valued at more, right? Think about like when toilet paper was in low supply during the pandemic. It was worth a lot more. That supply and demand is a big factor. If you remember me saying, sometimes I meet the appraiser with how many offers this house received, because I want them to know the amount of demand that this house had, especially if, you know, the price was up. Like if they overbid on the list price, I want to show them, hey, we got 30 offers on this house, because that shows the demand and the value. So for those of you, especially first-time home buyers, you've never bought a house, the market is a huge part of demand. And that's something that appraisers are looking at as well. But go ahead, Devin.
Yeah, very, very important point. Is it if it's Shara or Shara?
Okay.
Shara, that's so very important. And here's what I want to put out to everyone. And this is very, very, very important. Highlight it with like green highlighter in your textbooks. The appraiser operates in the past. A future prospective buyer / a realtor, they have the affordability to operate what they think the home might be worth. The appraiser can only do data for what has happened in the past. We cannot appraise a property for what we think it might be worth 2 weeks from now because of what we've seen 2 weeks prior. We can only appraise from appraisers are in the past.
And mostly based on things that have already sold, not things that are on the market.
Yes.
They're looking at comparables. It's not that they're looking at things that are listed, or this person has a house listed for $1 million.
Absolutely. It's listed.
They're looking at what people have paid for
it. The average
at that time, people were willing to pay more for things. So things were worth more. Now things are slowing down. So those values are going to come down accordingly because people are paying a little bit less than maybe what homes are listed for. So it's very market dependent. So when you say things are overpriced, they necessarily weren't overpriced, they were market priced because the demand was there. Okay.
There you go.
The demand or the market determines the price, what somebody's willing to pay for something, right?
Absolutely. And that's for determine if it's if it's overpriced or not for the appraisal.
Gotcha. Okay. Melly says, I'm literally sitting in the first time home buyers class and they mentioned the appraisal. I want to tell them just to mute and go and listen to us. Yeah, they should be listening to us. Get out that class.
Yeah, Melly. Congrats, Melly. That's awesome. That's awesome.
All right. So let's see. Let's ask quick questions. Would a water softener increase appraised value?
What's a water softener?
That means no.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know.
If you have to Google it, then that means no. Because
I'm gonna ask my wife.
An appraiser probably is not going to know that you even have a water softener in your house, right?
Yeah.
I think that's to get out like the hard water, kind of it gets some of that hard water deposits out of your pipe.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool. But that's something your realtor is gonna have to meet with them ahead of time and say, we just bought a water softener valued at $10,000.
I had a man show me his X-Man collection in his house. And he said, now, let me tell you something. This is an important room for him, sir. And now let me tell you something. I'm an X-Man fan too, but I couldn't appraise those action figures. They were awesome though. So yeah.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. Let's see what happens once we report it. So they're talking about the report. Will they reappraise it or will we have to pay for another one? Sometimes, let's say this, sometimes you will have to, if you're going to move on with a different lender, you probably are going to have to pay for another appraiser because sometimes you don't have the time because sometimes the report and the investigation and all of that might take a minute. What do you think?
It's the investigation process. There is no exact time period on that, but that's why it's so important to have your data so you can help push that process and be able to get that process everything that is needed. But no, they will investigate that, and then there will be from that investigation they will contact the necessary parties, the appraiser, go into that depending on if it's something that they feel that it needs to be flagged. So yes, it will be investigated though after, especially they will certainly investigate it.
Okay, let's talk about this, Michelle, so make this more clear.
Yeah.
So do appraisal values fluctuate with the market? So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the value, because what he's saying is when he's looking at comps, and a comparable is something that's already sold that's similar to your house, right? So that's what a comp is, or a comparable home is, okay? But they have already sold. So he's saying he only can look at, for the most part, he's looking at things that have already sold and closed, right? People have already paid for that. So that the market determined what they were going to pay for those homes, right? That's what we're talking about, the market. And he's not going to go 2 years ago to look at comparable homes. He's going to look at the most recent sales in the area. So do you want to clarify that just a little bit more?
No, I think you really did do that. And I think Michelle may have I think she's on point with it. But to cap off what you said, that we respond to the market. So I don't want to say we fluctuate with the market, because that kind of gives the insinuation that we kind of determine and pushing the market. We don't. We just report on what the market has shown us from what the average buyer has done in a specific case. So,
okay. Let's give Dorothea a hand. She said, I just got my house appraised today.
oh, that's amazing.
PMI. Yes.
Congrats.
If you don't know about removing PMIs, particularly from conventional loans for the most part, you can get your PMI removed once you get 20%. And that's worth the appraisal cost, because you are going to have to pay for the appraisal for them to come out to make sure you have 20% equity, but you can stop paying that PMI. So congratulations, Dorothea.
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm saying thank you for her.
Yeah.
I do have a video on how to get rid of your PMI if you haven't watched that yet. Kevin Jefferson, one of our favorite lenders, he's asking a question. What value does a finished basement play in the valuation versus an unfinished basement? How much more value are you giving to it?
I think that depends on the subject. It depends on subject, depends on, it really depends on the subject. I think when you get into more higher priced homes, more expensive homes, when you're talking about that, when you get into that $800,000 $1 million and plus range, I think that's when you get into more so things about like the materials of the actual flooring throughout the homes and everything. So in terms of an actual, there's not an exact value that is that a finished basement plays versus an unfinished basement. It really depends on the market. And I hate to say that to people sometimes as appraisers, because when they hear say it depends, it's because that's the truth. It really does depend. It may play in one market, Kevin, as opposed to not mattering in another market. So let's just use for example, I have seen sometimes on reports that there hasn't been as much necessarily added value in reports that I've seen in the past, and I'm talking about during my schooling days too, that it was a Baltimore place, and the subject property had a finished basement. The one or two of the comparables did not have an unfinished basement, but they were still good comparables according to mainly with the location and the square footage and things such that I was telling you about. But they had technically a basement that the house was sitting on top of, so it was counted for that. But there wasn't as much. There wasn't as significant maybe of a dollar value maybe that Kevin may be looking for that was different than the unfinished basement comp. So it really depends, Kevin. I wish I could be more exact with you from that. And if anything, if you want to expound upon that with me, certainly let me know. I can certainly give a more detailed insight of that later this week if you want, if you could contact me.
Okay. We're hitting up, we're a little bit past 7, so I must be your last question. I'm going to let them also answer, let them know how to reach you. And I'm going to pull back up your, Khadija, if you don't, Ms. Amara, if you don't mind, go ahead and put his Instagram back in the chat, please. And I'll put that on the screen. But go ahead, flooring. Say I got all carpet in my house. Is it, significantly less than if I have like all hardwood or all LVP or something like that?
Not necessarily. It depends. Like I said, it really depends. Just because a home has carpet versus a home versus a home that has all original hardwood floors versus a home that may have new laminated hardwood looking floors, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to change necessarily the value of the home. Now, here's what I will say the flooring does impact is, it does impact their condition rating, as I was talking to you about earlier, the condition of your home. So if your flooring, if it's poor carpet, if it's poor carpet, that's something to be, considered. So the flooring goes a little bit more so in terms of the condition rating. Now, again, if we're getting into homes that are in your $5 million plus range where everything is a specific material, then that's a whole different thing, such as like, your cost approach and stuff. So, right.
Very good. All right, Devin, number 1, everybody hit like and subscribe, and we're going to reach out to Devin and follow him on Instagram. Tell them how to reach you, Devin.
All right, follow me at the _husband appraiser. Again, follow me on Instagram at the _husband appraiser. And I look forward to just helping you with all your appraisal questions and needs. And if you're interested in finding out more about the career, because there's some exciting things that are happening to try to embrace diversity in this market and in this industry and appraisals. Shrita, thank you so much for having me. This has been such a blast. I've been having so much fun. Hope I didn't talk too much.
No, you didn't talk too much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on and helping people get the most value from their home and kind of understanding how that appraisal process works. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Please make sure you hit the like, subscribe. Any other questions, please put them in the comments. If we don't see them in the chat, you guys have a great night. Oh, we got a super chat. Let me see our super sticker. Juicy Fruit gave us a super sticker on our way out. Thank you so much, Juicy Fruit. We appreciate it. Thank you. Y'all have a good night and see you next week is our last live for Black History Month. Join me next Tuesday. Get here early. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.